Hi, my name is Kyha Scott and this is Uncommon.
Uncommon is a production by Neuralle, a full-service digital agency. If you want to grow with a premium agency and have the ability to work with Jordan directly, then learn more at neuralle.com/media and request a callback. That's neuralle.com/media.
Welcome to another episode of Uncommon. My name's Jordan Michaelides and I'm your host. In this episode, I sat down with Kyha Scott. Kyha is the founder and creative director of One Day Bridal and Chosen by One Day. Being that Lauren and I are in the early stages of planning our wedding, I thought it made sense to get probably one of Australia's greatest success stories in the space of weddings, so to speak, to pick their brain on how it all really works. And I think that Kyha's story is one of the classic tales of entrepreneurial resilience shaped by a personal itch that needed to be fixed through the creation of her own personalised wedding gown. We covered a lot in this episode, including her love of textile design and how that actually started, parenting values and challenges, advice for future mothers, reflection and scaling, creating custom gowns, fabric innovation, and horror stories, of course. Many thanks to Laura Henshaw, Insty Pants, Monet, Susie Jamel, and Anonymous_112. Love all your reviews. I know I asked some of you to do that, but we are pushing for 100. So if you're listening to this, if you've enjoyed an episode in the past, do leave us a rating on your Apple Podcast app. Share with your friends, take a screenshot, post on your Instagram story, tagging us at uncommon_show. You can watch the episode in full, search Uncommon Show on YouTube, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Show notes and all previous guests are at neuralle.com/podcasts. With that being said, thank you so much for listening. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with Kyha Scott. All right, Kyha, we're here finally.
We are. I know. When you first sent the email request for this, I remember thinking it is so far away.
I know.
I'll just put that in the calendar and won't worry about it. And then this week I was like, oh my God, we're in December.
I know. We are booked out till February at the moment.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so the problem for us is that we do one a week. So if all of a sudden someone cancels, you've got to have occasionally like a backup or someone that can fill it. And so we often, but as well, I'll often pitch a bunch of people. Let's say I pitch eight people, and more we're getting everyone that comes back. And I'm not, like, I'm used to the days of like 20% coming back. And so
now everyone's like, yep, I'll jump in.
Yeah, sure, no worries. And so I'm like, we're not free until March. Sorry. And they're like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. I don't do anything for 2 weeks ahead.
Yeah.
And then I'm following up on people, and like the last week of December, I just had like 2 cancellations.
Oh, that's
because
annoying.
they're like, they're actually they're like, oh yeah, it's the
silly
season.
And it really feels like silly season has hit full gear this week, I reckon.
Yes.
Like, I feel like everyone's like, I've got Christmas parties, I've got, lunches, and it feels like everyone's in full swing, which is exciting. I love Christmas.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
It is.
There's no doubt, like, having a big Greek family, catching up with the family is the thing I like the most. But I don't know. I find it weird at the moment, the fact that it's not even December and yet I feel like everyone has checked out.
That is so true, actually. I feel the same way. And I feel like everyone's got their Christmas trees up. It's not even
already,
December.
yeah.
I feel like I'm behind. I don't have mine yet. Isn't it December? You're meant to wait?
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of Christmas decorations already up around the burbs.
So I know in America they typically get it now just in time for Thanksgiving. But here, like Lauren's parents, like we're going down next weekend. We go down every month to visit them. They sort of live around Dramana, Mount Martha area.
I love that area.
Great area. And they've already got their tree.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, should we be getting a tree? We're not really having anything Christmassy here.
The smell is good though.
The smell is amazing.
It does get you into the Christmas spirit.
If you were to pick like your top smells, bit of a weird question, but
I'm like, what are my top smells?
What are they?
Ooh, top smells. I mean, a Christmas tree is something special because we're on the topic.
Yeah.
My favourite perfume, I love.
Yeah, because you have a very recognisable perfume. I noticed that when it came in, it's not L'Occitane, is it?
No, it's a New York brand called DS & Durga, and the name of the perfume is called I don't know what. But I get stopped a lot and asked what it is, and I love it. I can't smell it when it's on me, which apparently is a good sign.
Probably a good sign, yeah.
Yeah, but I love the smell when I first spray it. So I love that.
I remember the reason I smells is like my thing. Smells and probably taste. I used to work as a wine waiter before I got into the finance space while I was studying at uni. And I just remember, like, because you had such a heightened sense of smell, someone would come out of the bathroom. It wouldn't be a bad smell.
So what sort of smells?
Because we had like L'Occitane sort of
beautiful
hand wash, and you could smell it. Like
that moisturiser is amazing. The blue one. I don't know what that.
Yeah, what is it called?
I don't know what that one's called, but the blue hand moisturiser, the brand is amazing.
And they'd be walking down, like I could literally like target them, and they'd be walking down this walkway, and you're like, wow, I just need to, like, that smell is really, really amazing. But I don't know why. Smells have always been.
Rain sometimes, like, you know that.
Yeah.
I like the smell of rain.
Sort of this time of year, you sort of get like
when it's more tropical.
Yeah.
Versus just cold, wet, and horrible Melbourne weather, where it's like more like a fresh rain.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Like yeah, I know what you mean. Like the rain that you get in winter is more like numb hands, sort of wanting to get inside. Yeah, just another day. Now, Simon, as I was saying before, he gave me some things. He said you were clean as a whistle, which I agree with him. But he did come back to me and said he wanted to ask you, how did you go with the all-women staff party at Buxton Bentley, having all dudes?
Yeah, so we... the Buxton group, very good friends, particularly with the Bentley boys. And at that stage, they were predominantly male office, and I was an all-female staff. So we decided that to mix numbers and make them just a little bit more even, that we'd combine our Christmas parties. For a couple of years, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years in a row that we joined them. And look, they are a good time.
Yeah.
So we had a great time. The girls had a great time. I think the boys had a great time. So, yeah, it was good fun.
So you that reminds me of like the hospi days. You'd have like separate all girls, all guys party, and then everyone sort of meets on another day. Is that what was happening typically?
What do you mean? So
when I remember working at the Newmarket Hotel, every year no one got tips, so we'd keep all the tips. And then the guys and the girls would go out and they'd have their separate day.
Oh, really?
And then the company would pay for like a proper, this is the whatever group Christmas party type thing. Yeah. And that was when everyone came together.
Well, because we only have the one celebration a year, so it was just all in.
It was all in.
It's all in. And those boys were the same, so that was their time to shine, and they really did. And, we brought our best too, so they were some pretty wild nights. It was good fun.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Elwood initially until I was about 13, and then down to Blackrock, where I still live now.
Okay. Did you go to Furbank?
I did.
You did go to Furbank?
I did,
okay.
Yes.
Were you like Lauren, one of those kids who started in like kindergarten or something like that?
No. I was a little bit later, year 5. So went to Elstonwick Primary School when I was young, and then moved across there when I was year 5.
Okay.
Which was good.
Yeah.
A good age, I think.
I think so. I mean, I remember starting at Brighton Grammar in year 7. My brother started in year 5. Year 5 is one of those things, I don't know why everyone leaves in sort of year 4. I remember the primary school, I went to St Joan of Arc in Brighton.
Yeah, yep.
For a few years, and I remember in year 5 when I started there was 3 boys left.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think the mentality of my parents at the time was, we'll get you into a school where you're going to finish obviously your high school and build a friendship group and start to sort of, and it won't be such a scary transition.
But also you're more like, because that's the thing, is when you get to the senior school, that's when applications start coming in heavy. So maybe it's like they allow kids who are already year 5 and 6 to get in
That's true.
that group. I reckon there's something in that.
I reckon you're right there. They would just like get her in.
Just get her in, please. Yeah. I'll forever be thankful that we went to a private school like Brighton Grammar. I think mainly lucky because my brother got that scholarship. I think I would have gone to CBC.
Oh, yeah, I knew a lot of CBC kids.
Yeah.
Oh, good. I mean, I was so incredibly lucky. I wasn't an academic student. I wasn't necessarily applied either. I was quite distracted. Even to this day, I'm quite impatient, and, you know, I do get frustrated with things that take a long time.
Yeah.
So in school, and my dad was quite sick when I was in high school, but Furbank in that respect was very good at tutoring me, keeping me in line and keeping me sort of, at the end of the day, I got a great score and finished quite well. Never made it to uni, or did, but 4 times in different things, never.
Yeah. I know you did graphic design for a bit, right?
Yeah. For a little bit. And, you know, multimedia business design. I did law for a bit.
That's right.
And kept trying, but it's just not a place for me. I think I'm more visual, creative. I need to be doing more so than learning.
Yeah, and it's probably a good thing that you realise that. A lot of people spend years at university not realising it's probably not... and that's the thing now, is a lot of people who really should just be a builder. Or
Exactly.
a carpenter or some sort of
And
trade.
there's great opportunities and money in that landscape, but I feel like it's always been looked upon.
It's always been frowned upon.
Always. And I feel like there's so much opportunity there.
Yeah.
And if you know that you're not going to be that person that's going to, you know, succeed in a uni degree, why put yourself through that torture after you've just been through school?
I completely agree. I think, that was one thing that I noticed at high school. It was really frowned upon. Like, they tried to push out a lot of the kids, not push them out, but they really wanted the cream of the crop in year 11 and 12. So they
Absolutely.
would, and probably that was a good thing to make recommendations to people. Like, maybe you should just go to Sandy. You can do your VCal, or I think it was VCal back then, where you do like sort of a part trade type thing.
That's right.
But you're still finishing school.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that, actually. I think that was a good thing. But when you were growing up, what did you think you were going to be? Like, did you always have like an idea? I know the police officer thing.
Yeah, I definitely thought, you know, I don't think I realised until a lot later even until I was in the police force, how creative I actually was. I didn't realise it wasn't something that not everybody had. I thought that everybody just had that in them. I was quite naive in that respect. And so, you know, I did when I was younger think that I would probably go down the police force path, which is what I did straight after school. But then quickly learnt that maybe that wasn't for me and needed to pivot and do something different. So other than that, I did love the graphic design side as well, and architecture and interiors, anything that sort of had that creative element where you were sort of designing or creating a space or creating something with your own aesthetic applied to it. I really enjoy, and still to this day I do. Like, you know, when it's my house, you know, or designing a new project, or even all the creative with the business, I still are very involved in every facet of that.
What do you think it is that you like about that? Is it the creating element? Is it the aesthetic thing where you look at it and you go, that looks really nice and it matches for me? And it's sort of like a conscientiousness in design, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and creating your own world, essentially, that's, you know, everything that you love about it. And I always say it goes beyond the product. It needs to be, you know, how it's presented to the customer, how they experience it in store, how the tone of voice that we use across our 2 different brands. So it's not just one element of design. It goes across so many different platforms that you have to bring it all together to create this world or this universe.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I've always wondered why do women in particular over excel in the design space? Why do men struggle with it? I remember Lauren showed me this thing recently that she had because she did graphic design.
Yes.
One of those groups, and they sent this research and it showed that like women have a higher concentration of something in, not their retina, it's something in the eye that allows them to identify objects in a more intricate detail, if that makes sense.
Really? That's so interesting.
Yeah, so that's the reason why women appreciate really intricate. Like, if you look at a lot of women's design, there's a lot more patterns on average. I think this is part of this study. They did like a statistical analysis on patterns and colours and all that sort of stuff. And men's stuff is really blocky. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah, generally speaking, yes, probably.
Like there's not much, if I think about it, like me and what guys wear, there's never much pattern to it.
No, and it depends on the brand and the aesthetic, or like you said, there's plenty of incredible male fashion designers.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
They probably play on that one thing that they've got and really sort of go down that path and create things around. If it is pattern, it's, all pattern.
Yeah.
Whereas it doesn't probably then dip into the more plain and simple side of things.
Yeah. It's quite rare though. Like it is, I just noticed, looking at the study, they were talking about like, all the big the design houses like Louis Vuitton and Gucci and who normally leads these companies, and it was super interesting. I just didn't think it came down to that intricacy of the eye, but it makes sense because if you can identify things at a sharper rate, then you're going to have more talent in selecting things.
Interesting. I'll have to read up on that.
Yeah,
I'm really
it's very, very interesting. You were making tracksuits as a kid, I know that. Was there a design thing that you thought, oh, this is sort of the thing that I really love to do? Like Lauren used to tell me that she used to make dolls' houses. I was very surprised to hear, like, because there's no record of it, there's no photos of her with it, but that was one of her things as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Like jewellery making, I used to really love in high school.
Oh, right.
And used to even sell some of it and would just make big earrings and then sell it. And to me, it was just fun. When I was younger, Barbie's clothes was a thing. My sister, Stephanie, who I've got 3 siblings, she's the one after me, she was more into Barbies than me and very much sort of the typical princess. So she'd make me, make Barbie clothes with her on the weekend so that she could dress up all her Barbies. And then, like I mentioned, Mum made me make my own tracksuit pants, which was terrifying. But I think at the time I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I definitely wasn't like, this is what I'm going to do. Otherwise I would have probably had a much more direct path to fashion. But I was always interested in it and always interested in the different fabrics and how you would piece together a garment and, what the machine could do and how you could utilise it in different ways. And then watching Mum with her sports brand build that and have all the clothes there, and I found it fascinating that she could, come up with an idea and then watching that transition into an actual garment was I really enjoyed that. And that's when I went through my wedding dress process. That's where the fascination picked up again of like, wow, this is incredible. I've seen a sketch and then it's gone into calico and the steps and then just that magic kind of evolving.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me of how, like, if I go to Dad's print factory, I love smelling the paper.
Yes.
Did you have a thing like that? Did your mum have like a factory or did she do it from home?
She did a lot of it from home, but we used to go to the factories in Collingwood because she used to, that's where she would have it produced. So I remember always like going through all the racks and seeing all the machines and just sort of, subconsciously taking it all in, but not being particularly interested because you never want, I didn't want to do what my parents did. You don't want to fall in that trap. I'm not going to do what you're going to do. And then, here we are.
Do you find that more and more as you get older, you realise that more and more you're like your parents, like a perfect meshing of your parents?
Oh, absolutely. There's, sometimes words come out of my mouth and I will even say, or my sister, I work with my brother and my sisters and they'll be like, that's Mum. and it terrifies me, that I can't believe I just said that.
Because I do
a wonderful woman, but
yeah,
you don't think that you are going to turn out, especially with parenting. I have a 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And so a lot of, the sort of values I guess we're trying to instill in her, or when we're telling her off or, disciplining her, that's literally my parents coming out of my mouth.
Do you think there's like anything in the business that transitioned? No, you would have started the business before you had your daughter. So it started 2011. It's now 2019. So she's 6. It would have been 2 years into it.
2 years in, which was Willa, love her, but she was a definite surprise. I actually didn't find out until I was 11 weeks pregnant I was pregnant. I was just not very in tune with myself and also just running the business and kind of in that really small stage of small business where I was doing everything. So from the inquiries to the fittings to the consultations, the designing, the, bookkeeping, invoicing, everything was, and the production schedules, everything was being run by me at that stage. And couldn't work out why I was getting these headaches. And then a client actually said to me, have you thought that maybe you're pregnant? And I was like, oh, no. And then went straight to the chemist. And lo and behold, I was. And that, in some ways I'm really grateful. It was a shock, but in hindsight now, it really made me put some processes in place then.
Yeah.
It was highly stressful on so many different levels, especially once I had Willa. Within the week I was back at work.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yeah, on the way home from hospital, I stopped to see a client because I'd really mucked this girl around. And she was a bride. God. Brides, you can't muck around brides. And so I stopped, and I'd had an emergency Caesar, so I was quite sore. So I couldn't sort of stand up. So my mum came with me, and I held Willa as a newborn on the way home from hospital, and Mum helped me put the gowns on her while I directed from sitting on the floor.
Oh, Kyha, fucking hell.
So challenges like that, and then just little things like I was breastfeeding her, and then having clients I didn't feel comfortable feeding her in front of clients. And I was still getting used to when you would feed her and when you wouldn't feed her. And so I'd be to clients, I couldn't really give them a set time, which girls want anybody wants a set time for an appointment. But I was like, I'm actually running an hour late. I'm not sure because I don't know when she's going to stop feeding, and I don't know if she's going to go to sleep. And I would sit in my car and feed because the studio wasn't big enough at that stage for, multiple people to be in there. It was very small. So I look back on that time and it was extremely stressful, and I would never do it the same again. But it did teach me a lot, and it did make me put things in place so that other people... It taught me how to lose control a bit, and how that's not such a bad thing, and that if you teach people right, they can actually step in and help you and excel. But it was very scary at the time.
I've had this conversation with Lauren, like what happens if... Because the great thing about having your own business is the flexibility, right? So you can have a child quite easily, and this is something my auntie has spoken to us about because she ran her business when she had her kids, and you can do both, but you've got to have things in place that prevent you from having a nervous breakdown. And so if you were to look back on that time and you were to say to the Laurens of the world who in the next 2 years are probably going to have a kid, maybe they're running a business already, what are some of the most crucial aspects or things that they can look at now?
I think setting yourself up well before the baby arrives. Yeah. So having someone that you've hand over, your role to, that understands the business, and if, not every business can afford that either. So is it even just on a part-time or a contract capacity where they can come in and just relieve that pressure off you, because it is, as a new mum, it's so daunting. It's so new. You're tired. You actually, in some ways you switch off to the business, which I never ever thought I would. Yeah. But it doesn't become your priority anymore. That is your baby. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, but I've got a human that needs me first. Yeah. And I think that's what I was quite shocked at, is that, the business I loved and I lived and I breathed it, but it didn't even come into my mind some days because I was just too consumed with trying to work out how to be a mum, how to get all the washing done, what food I needed to prepare, even just for myself, how to get a shower in during the day, if I had to go to work during the day. Willa hated the car, so could I time it so that she could sleep, so then I wouldn't build my own anxiety up while she was driving and screaming all the way to work, and then walking in like red-faced, flushed, stressed, on a higher level of energy. Wow. So just, I think having someone that you can rely on to back you up and maybe relieve some of your day-to-day
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds like it made you a better entrepreneur.
Absolutely. In hindsight, at the time though, I would never wish that upon my worst nightmare because, and I'm as a person, I'm very much an ideas person and love looking at strategy and bigger and better ideas and how can we do things differently and, what are we not doing well enough? But when it comes down to detail, I'm not that person. Yeah. And it wasn't until after that whole experience I realised, no, that's where I need to hire in and get get a bookkeeper that loves looking at spreadsheets. I couldn't think of anything worse. So, let's get a bookkeeper that loves reconciling accounts and working out how to save money and how to, run the accounts better or the invoicing in a better way. And for me, at the time, I hadn't identified that, but moving forward, yeah, it's definitely, that's in the business in general, is if I'm not good at it, get someone in that is.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think with the business in particular, like was that the moment that took it from being this sort of I'm working in the spare bedroom at home to it being like, do you think that forcing function to get those other people, even if they were part-time, contract, whatever, to do those day-to-day things allowed it to grow more than it ever could? Or do you think you would have progressively got there, or do you think that moment was the one where it's sort of just like a hockey puck moment?
No, it was interesting. During that time, I had a lot of reflection time as well. And what I noticed about my business in particular and One Day Bridal was that I had a business that was so reliant on me in every aspect, particularly client facing. And I always say One Day Bridal was my diploma of business, and then Chosen by One Day is my actual business. One Day Bridal taught me all the lessons, and then I decided while I was on maternity leave and looked into the way that America's bridal industry ran, and it was very different to ours, and identified that it was actually they controlled their costs, there was a lot more efficient, and the way that they did things wasn't by not every single customer was a customised gown. It was, similar to sort of a suiting thing. You went in and you tried on dresses, and then you picked one and you ordered it in your size, and then you had it altered to you on arrival. And that to me just made sense, the way that at a lower price point.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, that makes so much sense. Why haven't I been doing that? Why have I been doing this painful,
custom?
Custom where girls would lose weight, and that would be my problem to fix, but it might take me 16 hours to fix that problem on my time. And, your margin slowly is decreasing. So that's when sort of, Chosen started, and that's been the business that really, is the bread and butter essentially. And also it allowed me to be a bit more creative because I was saying, this is my design. We're not going to collaborate on this. This is the design. This has been designed this way because it works and it looks best on the body this way, and you can make tweaks, but this is how it is.
Yeah, and I think the Chosen brand is probably what will give you scale and an ability to do more as a business. And I think that One Day will probably over time be the thing that gives you fulfillment.
Absolutely.
And I find like that's what it is. Like this podcast makes $0. It costs us a shitload of money to make every year, although we may have just found a few sponsors.
That's exciting.
Which is exciting, which at least makes us break even on it.
But I feel like people don't talk about it. Like the first 3 to 4 years of my business, I didn't earn a single dollar.
No, you don't earn shit.
Like not a single cent. If anything, I was putting money in and losing money.
Yeah, my business has a massive loan that
exactly. But nobody everyone just has this assumption that you're flying.
Yeah.
But really, in the background, you're sort of riding, first of all, the cash flow wave, which is, temperamental many times of the year. And then also, it's really difficult. And as for having babies, for instance, if I'm paying someone else, it's not me paying me.
Yeah.
So that was very difficult. But Chosen has given us the opportunity to scale in 38 different locations now. It's got a fantastic manager that runs that business.
Yeah.
And it's fun.
Your husband, this is really the trigger. I mean, you didn't like the bridal experience yourself, but it was your husband that gave you the push to go out and do this. I've got no doubt through all the blood, sweat and tears in the first 2 years in particular, the hardest years, he would have pushed you to continue going. And that his wage would have probably been the saving grace
100%
for you guys
was.
if you're not earning anything in the first 4 years. What did he teach you in particular about the business and those early few years, I'd say?
I think in those early few years, I wouldn't have backed myself. There is no way known that I thought that I had the capability or the talent to do what I've done, but he was the one behind me, pushing me, going, absolutely, you can do this. You've got a great idea. You've got a great creative aesthetic. That you can do this. Go and do it. We'll work out the rest later. And I think having that faith in me from the beginning and that support and it was never any resent that I'd put us into a really tricky situation personally. And even to this day, there's so many things that we could have done if I'd just gone down stayed in the police force and earned my 80 grand a year, and he earned whatever he earned. We'd probably be in a much better position personally right now. But it was like, no, this is the bigger picture, and you need to be happy and fulfilled, and this is what you want to do, and you're good at it, so go and do it.
Do you think I know you thought there was a massive opportunity here and I know that you went and bought some fabric, which you wasn't too happy about.
Yeah.
Do you think there was like an aha moment where, like, who was the first person that you sold to? Because the hardest sale in a way is the first sale, but I often find that the second sale is the hardest sale. To back it up is even harder. Do you remember those first little...
I can remember those first few clients, and in those days, what I had realised and identified was that I needed, in order to build a good reputation or a portfolio of work, I needed to do things a lot cheaper than what I would ordinarily want to charge. But I needed some work. And at the time, I couldn't afford to make samples. So I had to sketch. And that's one thing I can do is I can sketch, but I'd literally have these girls come and see me, and I would sketch and be like, I promise you I'll do a good job. Like, that's all they got from me. And thank goodness for those first few that really did trust me and took the leap of faith and went with me, and we had a great time. And there's some, I have really fond memories of that time. And they also inspired me, the clients themselves. So it sort of started to lead me down the path that I knew I was going to take, and what sort of designer I wanted to be. So
yeah, and you can see that in the way that you design with the dresses. Like, I know, obviously, Steph Claire Miller just got married.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so strange.
It's very strange. But you named one of your dresses after her, the Smith dress.
Yes.
So I could see how that would happen regularly. They sort of act as
almost like a muse.
A muse or inspiration in a way, as part of that design process.
I love the collaborative part of when I do a custom gown with someone, because when I meet my clients, I always say to them, the open communication and honest communication is really important between us. And I want to work, because most of the girls that I do work with at that custom level, they know themselves, they know their style, they know their bodies, they know what works, what doesn't work. And so it's about then saying, I really love this, what do you think? And, most of the time it works, but every now and then, like with Steph, for instance, we started with a different dress for her second dress, and she was like, do you know what, this is not me. I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And I was like, cool, then we'll just do something else, because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. That's not what this is about. And then so we just sort of hashing ideas together, sketching different things, showing different concepts, materials, and then we ended up where we did with the second dress, which I absolutely adored. And that sometimes does happen in this process, but if you're not working with the right person or designer, you might not have that flexibility. Yeah.
The way I've sort of found it to be going through the suit tailored experience is you've got to be open. It's sort of like when you go to, I remember the days of when I was very particular about how I got my hair cut. And I'm like, I want to be like this person. And then the hairdresser would look at it and go, well, your hair doesn't really look like that person, right? So you go there and you're like, no, but I want this haircut, and they do it, and it never turns out
and
like
then
the way you want it.
And
then you're disappointed, right? And then it was one when I started seeing my barber, Summer, and she at Electric Brain down in, they actually just moved to Brunswick East, but they're in Fitzroy.
That's a long way away.
It's a long way. I still go, she just had her daughter as well. She'll be breastfeeding, then she'll put her down and then cut my hair.
Yeah.
So
it's a crazy time.
Crazy
Good on
time.
her.
Good on her. Yeah. So I want to continue to support her, because we get along pretty well. But she sort of showed me that you need to just go with how your body and your hair falls, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing with suits, and I could see it would be the same with dresses.
Absolutely.
Particularly after watching the way that designers will come up with a dress. I never thought about it, but they'll often grab, and I can see where you start with the fabric. They'll just flow it on themselves and see how the actual fabric falls.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, right?
Absolutely. And also with clients, like, you might have a client come in and they want to wear a certain silhouette of dress, but that particular silhouette looks great on a tall, wafy body, and they're 5 foot nothing and, you know, a little bit podgy, and you have to sort of in a really polite way identify that that's not going to look the same. And obviously being a bride, you are emotionally, you know, heightened. So it is language is a huge thing in bridal, is learning how to delicately deliver messages so that you don't obviously offend, but you also get the ultimate outcome for them. Because, you know, I don't want anyone to step out on their wedding day and not feel like they are just, you know, the absolute optimum version of themselves.
Yeah. It's about guiding the person into what you know is best for them.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you're a really minimal, modern, clean person in the way that you dress, there's no point going and putting something on that's heavily embellished and got a million different elements, because that's not going to feel you.
No.
And so it's about, you know, the way that girls, when they walk in, the way that they dress often gives me so many indicators of the path that they're going to go down, which they don't understand. But it's one thing that I always look at, because it gives you an understanding of what they sort of might end up in.
Yeah. And so that's something that Lauren's learned recently. Like, she had this idea of what she wanted, and she realised like she hates lacy things because it makes her itchy. And she sort of, I think she found, we actually know the Mancusos through a friend.
Yes.
And she really likes this. She worked out that the style, I don't know what you call it, but the style that Bridie had is sort of what actually suits her.
Yeah, it would. It would look gorgeous.
As opposed to sort of, she thought of like it'd be like this backless thing, and you know,
how
long
often
sleeves.
does she put on a big ball gown? That's what I often say to so many, you know, girls as well. Like the consultants that we have in store, they're used to seeing our garments and gowns on so many different bodies, and also they know what works with your body. So, you know, let them guide you a little bit, because it's often something unexpected that you'll feel amazing in. But at the same time, you know, there are certain silhouettes that work with certain bodies as well.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. People just need to realise it and accept it.
Sometimes you can't tell people.
And, you know, they
just got to let them go.
Now, this you mentioned before about you can tell when someone walks in the way they dress, what's going to suit them. And one of the things I had around was, you know, before the process will stem from you putting the fabric probably on and sketching from there, I'm guessing. What non-bridal styles really inspire how you think about the brand?
So as in, who do I draw from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, are there particular designers that you've always really liked?
I always don't look at bridal for inspiration. Like, you will never ever see bridal on my board. Like, I have a million Pinterest boards, by the way. They're all secret, and there's many of them. But there will never be anything bridal on there. It's, you know, I often look to a lot of red carpet and a lot of ready-to-wear designs as well. So, you know, Australia's ready-to-wear designers, I think, are at the forefront of fashion, your Zimmermans and Scanlons. But just looking at the different neckline cuts and shapes and how people use fabrics differently is really interesting to me. And what we do a lot of in-house, and which I really enjoy as part of my role, is fabric innovation. So we actually work with different mills to develop different types of fabrics. And, you know, one particular fabric that we use a lot of, called a bonded georgette, came out of me doing a lot of red carpet, and I was using neoprene, which is like scuba like fabric, because it doesn't crease, it looks like it's sprayed on the body, it hugs you, you know, it does all the right things, but I just didn't feel it was elevated enough for bridal. And so we worked with a mill in Korea and then in China to develop this fabric that is a georgette that's bonded with a synthetic, and that gives you that kind of almost like a scuba feel, but a nicer luxe finish. And hugs, it's like Spanx on steroids, we say. So when you put it on your body, it like hugs you in, but you get this beautiful matte finish. And so doing things like that within the business then allows me to play with different ways that we can make different shapes on the body. And
You've got me thinking about the way that the industry, like right now you've got fast fashion, you've got ready to wear, sort of where you're probably designing 4 seasons in a year, right? And then maybe some brands might do 2 a year, so summer, or spring, summer, autumn, winter. How often are you thinking about, with these Pinterest boards, with your selection of fabrics, how often will you think about a new design season, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work 12 to 18 months ahead of a collection launch.
Okay.
So which is quite a long lead time, as you can imagine. So, and then the collection, so I design 2 for Chosen per year and 1 for One Day Bridal.
Okay.
So 3 collections a year. And then we also have our product that we develop as well. So we've got jackets, pajama sets. What else have we got in there? That's all I can remember for now. Veils is another one.
Yep.
Jewelry, we do a lot of jewelry.
Bit of jewelry there.
So for me, it never ever ends.
Yeah.
Ever. And with the designing for the wedding gowns, what I tend to do is come up with a collection, but it's almost like a rolling sampling, so that when it comes, so we've always got new samples happening and coming in, and then when it comes to the time of the collection, I'll pick my 12 strongest and the ones that tell a story together, and they'll be put forward as the collection. And there might be probably still about 6 or 7 or 8 that don't make the cut.
And how often are you travelling a year to places to view things like fabric, manufacturing process and so on?
Pretty much every month.
Really?
So
So
look, I
those
don't
freaking
plan on
five-
doing that next year, but this year, we show in New York twice a year at New York Bridal Fashion Week. We then go to Premier Vision, which is Paris, to view fabrics. We manufacture in China, and we visit. We're really strong on visiting our factories quite consistently, and also ensuring that the way that the product is made and the environment is a good environment. So we visit them pretty much every 2 months. Where else do we go? And then around America to visit our stockists.
Who's your favourite airline to fly with?
Qantas.
You've got the...
I tried Virgin. I tried.
I can't do it.
I can't do it. I went back. My husband flies Virgin.
Do you have frequent flyers?
I do.
Okay. I hope your sister's now in charge of finance has gotten you guys sorted with your frequent flyers, because
She has. She got straight onto that Amex.
yeah,
And
we earn a lot. That's one good thing about owning a business, is those frequent flyers.
Absolutely.
Like, I think I've already worked out that we can get a first class return flight from Melbourne to Dubai for our honeymoon.
Incredible.
Yeah, with the points that we've got, which is awesome.
It's so good. I do travel a lot. I do love it though.
Yeah.
It's a part of my job now.
It's fun.
Look, it's not always fun. It definitely has its moments, and leaving the family is hard. But
it makes you appreciate them.
It makes me appreciate, and also I don't like staying still. So it gives me, that little bit of a break from the business as well, to think about the bigger ideas. Sometimes I think when you're in the business every day, like I had a stint where I think I was home for 4 months, and I actually really needed the travel to just get away and think about the business differently, because I'd got so wrapped up in the operational day-to-day that I had stopped thinking ahead. I just was thinking day-to-day.
Yeah, I'd 100% agree with that. It gets you out of that sort of introspection illusion. Yeah, that illusion that we think we have everything going on, and I love it. We went to Japan recently. We did an interview with someone there. We're meant to do 2, but it's great. It just really
wanted
gets you
to
out
go
of
to Japan. I've never been.
It's a crazy place. It's one of the only places on earth that you really feel like an outsider.
Really?
Yeah. It's really, like 97% of the population is Japanese. The only immigrants that live there are Koreans and Chinese. And
That's incredible.
You're just like a lot of... So we interviewed an Australian who lives there. She's sort of part of like a big studio there, but she's a vlogger. So they call them these J vloggers over there. They're basically people who are conduits between Japan and the West, and they talk about life in Japan.
So interesting.
Yeah, so they're sort of in this weird expat place where they're not really locals and they're not really foreigners, if that makes sense. That makes sense. And they often like will go to a restaurant and they'll still get like thrown a menu like English menu straight away, or like no foreigners.
Oh, really? I wouldn't have expected Japan to be like that.
So they have this thing there. There's only 3 places in the world you get this: Greece, Japan, and most Arab countries, and they call it the public face and the private face.
Yes.
So you have like different modes for family life and public life. And so in Japan, the way it exhibits is through respect.
Yes.
So if you can't speak English perfectly fluently, then they're not like their willingness to speak English with you is very, very low, unless they're in a tourism restaurant sort of space. But we would regularly go to restaurants, and they'd be like, "Oh, no foreigners, no English menu," and you'd have to translate. You'd either have to use Google Translate, or you would just go to another place. It was really, really interesting. But then you get a lot of they're totally open. It's just they're deeply embarrassed. If they can't
dignity
speak.
Is
it's a real dignity thing. And I couldn't work it out until we made friends with these people in sort of regional Japan that they used to work in finance, and they bought a bunch of old properties and they rent them out through Airbnb. And so we just sit down there and chat with them, and they tell us people just are really, really edgy about that sort of thing.
I can understand that with their culture. Yeah.
And so they're very you can't eat in public. If you're going to eat, you have to stand still outside the shop and eat it. Yeah. They have taxes for if you eat in store versus takeaway. Yes. Different levels of taxes, which is really strange. Really? But it's a fascinating place.
Yeah, I really want to go there.
I think the bridal industry there would be intriguing, to say the least.
Well, I think in a lot of Asia, I don't know what Japan, I think Japan is the same actually, is their culture is higher. So they're not actually bi.
Yeah, so we were planning to get married in Kyoto.
Yeah, wow.
And the big white Western wedding is huge there.
Really?
Absolutely massive.
Didn't know that.
They do still have traditional weddings, but they're becoming few and far between, and oftentimes they'll do both.
Tea ceremony? No, well, China's tea ceremony.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. It's a Shinto ceremony. You sort of go to a temple, and they'll have the families from either side, and they'll do the official, this is the joining of two families. They'll do that. There might be 10 people there, but then afterwards they'll go have a white wedding. That's where they get all the photos, and there's all these
and the
spaces.
pre-wedding, do they do? You see so many in Asian cultures the pre-wedding shoots. Do they do that?
Yeah. That is a thing, isn't it?
It's a thing over there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I work in Hong Kong at the Loft, which is they stock our gowns, both one day bridal and chosen by one day. And it's really interesting. I love hearing about different cultures and weddings. I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
But a lot of pre-wedding shoots. They get so many requests for pre-wedding shoots, and also the culture over there is very much higher, not bi.
Yeah, we noticed this here. We've got a few friends from Malaysia, and a few of those couples have gone and got. You know how you get the save the date type invites?
Yes, but
they've
it's
done
a full shoot.
Yeah. They're in a ball gown or a suit. Yeah. It's not the same thing they get married in. I'm wow.
Yeah,
and I've started noticing people doing that here.
Interesting, and because they have generally about 5 different outfit changes too throughout the night in Chinese weddings.
Yeah, wow.
So it's very intense changing.
Yeah, Lauren and I literally had that debate because these friends had done it, and then another couple, an Aussie couple, they went and did it, and we're like, wait, is this a thing now?
Should we be getting
and I'm
a dress on?
No, not at all. Nope, not happening. Just design the invites, we'll send it out. But that is, I know what you mean. Different cultures of weddings is really interesting. My grandfather was Greek Cypriot, married my grandmother who was sort of had that English-Irish background. Yeah. And back then they used to have a dowry, but it's not traditionally, they don't give you money. It's just in a sort of a process, a traditionalness, if that makes sense. And so his mum, his yaya for my dad, sat them down. They had special tea, and then they had citrus, grapefruit and stuff in Australia back in the 1950s, which would have been crazy expensive. Yes. And the parents would be sitting there, and they did this whole thing.
Beautiful.
And do you accept this? And blah blah blah. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
I love that
really,
stuff.
Same. I find it fascinating.
Yeah. The stories and the relationships that come from that. All right, the dressmaking process. This is saying, as I watched this video, I really wanted to get an understanding of how you do it, because you do it locally.
We do.
You own a lot of the manufacturing process, which I was saying off air is cumbersome, but will probably be good for you in the long run.
It will. I think you need to have some element of control over your product.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you off air and also earlier that we do manufacture some of our product in China and in India, and I think a lot of people are scared to say that as well, especially with a high price point product. But there is so much that goes into it to get the product to the customer that I'm not scared of of having that conversation. And especially in America, when I go to America, they almost want to rip out the tags in the gown that say made in China. And I have to tell them that's illegal and they can't do that.
Really?
Yes. Like, because they have, this idea that anything you made in China is cheap. But as soon as I say, well, where do you think your Gucci bag's made? And they will say, well, in Italy. No, sweetheart, that's made in China.
Yeah.
And your sneakers and probably everything you're wearing and maybe even your Rolex one day.
Have you ever thought about documenting and having someone create a video around your entire process from start to finish?
So funny. I had a client years ago who owns a production company, and we keep saying that we need to do this sort of documentary where it does follow me from the beginning, from the local to the international manufacturing, and just, follows exactly what happens throughout the whole journey from client to, them essentially then picking up at the other end, because it is really interesting. And that's what fascinated me from the beginning to get into it.
I've got a note here to send you some stuff after this. There's something that I loved was Anthony Bourdain, bless his heart. Do you know of Anthony Bourdain?
Yes.
Yeah, so he unfortunately passed away about a year ago, and he did one of the only series outside of his TV show with Balvenie. And Balvenie is like a really high quality Scotch maker. And they went and documented the entire process and created it into series, and it did so well that they made a series about other creators who make really niche things like motorbikes, leather jackets, all this sort of stuff. And it turned into like 12 episodes.
Yeah,
but it was just like a paid branded series.
Interesting, because it is such a interesting, even where your clothes are made is interesting. I think the Iconic did something last year or the year before where they traced it to some degree in a really small, short sort of clip, which started that conversation around people sort of accepting the fact that, yes, a lot of, to manufacture in Australia, as much as I would love it to be, 100% owned and 100% manufactured in Australia, the reality is that for a low price point product, you can't do that anymore. For our higher price point, absolutely. There's, and we do manufacture that in our workroom, and we do finish everything here in our workroom. We quality control everything here. So everything comes back to Australia. Everything is put through our workroom here. But the thing with society today is they want, it's that fast fashion. They want things cheaper and quicker. Yeah. And to do that, you need to, and also the scale and the skill level that we have here. In China, there is millions of people that it's their culture to learn how to sew and to stitch and to manufacture garments or products. Whereas here, it's a really niche sort of role, and to find many people that can do that well is really hard.
Yeah, I think the you've said in interviews, it sort of sounds like it's from an older generation.
Absolutely. Like we've still, we've got, Grace who's 60 or 70, Paulina who's 70. She's come back from retirement to help me out, so there, it is an aging. And then the people that do come in at the other end are generally fashion students, and they're extremely talented, but they've got to learn. Yeah. So there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of experience to be gained.
Yeah. That's got me thinking about talent and how this sort of works. Like, have you, because at Suit Shop, these guys are apprentice tailors.
Okay, interesting. Yes.
So they come across they're not retail attendants, but they're guys helping there, and they're sort of just helping you select your suit and everything. But no, they're actual tailors themselves, so they're training to be tailors. Have you thought about, I can't remember, I didn't get time to look, but does dressmaking have an apprenticeship sort of setup?
A lot of girls will go through fashion school, so that's almost like the apprenticeship to enter into the industry. And then we do have a bit of a mentorship program through our work where, for instance, at the moment we have an incredible pattern maker. She's been with me for years, but she's getting to the stage where she's going to want to go and have children and have a family and have her time. So she's training up one of the younger girls to then take over her role so she can have some time off. So, and then, the older ladies teaching the younger ones. So that happens naturally through the environment, but there is no set apprenticeship, or a lot of the RMIT will often send us a lot of their students to do internships with us, which is fantastic, and they're really helpful and get to work in an environment that doesn't really ordinarily exist here in Australia, so that's exciting for them.
You might be in a unique position as the business grows, with Chosen in particular, that that may become a thing. And like I said, I've always found it fascinating that people go to uni to do XYZ when you could be doing it on the job.
100%. Interesting. My global wholesale manager, she went to uni, was studying marketing and was working for me as a receptionist at the time, and then started to get more involved with the business and really was enjoying sort of the challenge of what she could do within her role and how she also had opportunity within the business, because the business was growing fast and we were there was new roles becoming available, and she stepped in to help in wholesale. And now she started off as just the Australian wholesale manager, and now she's global, and she does an incredible job. And she dropped out of uni she was a quarter of the way through, but she said, why would I continue to do that when I absolutely adore this? I'm learning so much more. And also, we've got some really incredible talent that we've managed to attract from a management and seniority sort of level. Mm-hmm. And so she gets to be mentored by them. So she's like, this is all my dreams in one. And I've learnt so much more. I feel that I've learnt so much more. Yeah,
I think you're going to be in the next few years a very enviable position, which comes from being a leader in that regard and in that space. The process of the actual dressmaking, I think there's obviously a difference between chosen and one day.
There is.
So one day being highly customized, chosen having a pattern, so to speak, already set and allowing you to adjust that.
Certain small things. Yeah.
Are the dresses already made, or are you just going off patterns?
Off patterns. So they're still made to order. We don't hold stock, essentially. So every order that comes through is then placed as an order to our factories, who have worked with us closely to identify how we like things made. We've sent our team over there to train them too, so that they stitch the way that we want them stitched, and they, represent the brand and the product the way it should. And then, yes, One Day Bridal is made here in Melbourne. A lot more sort of laborious, I'd say.
Yeah.
A lot more time, a lot more stages in the process as well.
Yeah, so you'd have way more control over what's happening to it. It is literally a custom garment.
100%.
Every single component. You'd have to make the pattern. So I guess for people who don't understand making clothes, you've got to, depends how you're doing it, right? If it's fully custom, the person tells you what they want. Okay, this is my mood board. This is the sketches. Here's the pattern.
Identify the fabrics, different layering of fabrics to make sure that they all work together.
What are the little extra pieces? Am I putting beads on this? I guess the main thing that people may not understand with wedding gowns, I've learned, is that you sort of design the bodice and then the skirt separately, and then they join, right?
No, always one.
Always one?
You design the garment as a full garment.
Right.
Depending on the construction of the gown and depending on what it is that you're designing, it may have a bodice and skirt, but generally it is all designed as one.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And so...
Some designers do have interchangeable tops and skirts so that you can, take one from one and
choose one from
the other.
Yeah, I feel like that's what Suit Shop does. I mean, I guess with suits it's a lot easier. It's a lot blockier. You're like, okay, what lapel do you want? What buttons do you want?
Exactly.
Do you want your name stitched in the jacket? Stuff
Such
like
a
that.
Nice little touch.
I love that. All my jackets have got my name put in there. I'm like, maybe one day when we have some kids, maybe they'll want to take.
Well, P. Johnson and they do such an incredible job. Yeah. They really do.
I remember my grandfather. He was like an immaculate dresser, and he had like a few. Was it Valentino? He had a few amazing suits, like Emporio Armani type suits back in like the 50s, and like
all
really
Italian fabrics,
expensive, crazy suits that he would also wear to the beach. Three-piece suits to the beach.
I love that.
There's photos of him. It's seriously so strange looking at those photos from that era. So obviously born like he would have been born like early 1930s. And by the time he was 18, sort of the end of the war, and he's dressed in like this immaculate double-breasted suit, sometimes with a vest and like a pencil mustache. And I'm like, he's the woggiest looking dude you ever see. I'm like...
Down at the beach.
Yeah, down at the beach in a three-piece suit. And there's all these photos of him with his mates, and they're like mucking around with like obviously a disposable camera on film, getting photos. It's really, really interesting to see that.
Fun.
Good fun. All All right, we're nearly about to crack over now, but I want to ask you a few quick things about the business before we jump into these rapid fire questions. We spoke before this about what Elon Musk says about business. You're basically chewing on broken glass and staring into the abyss. You gave me some shocking stories. I feel like that is the thing that makes you as a business person. You either sink or swim at that moment. What are some of the worst examples you've had from a manufacturing side of things, customers, whatever it may be? What's the one thing that you can talk about that still gives you nightmares to this day?
There's so many, and I think I explained to you before, I feel like every day there's new hurdles, there's new fires to be put out, and I think as part of having your own business, that is something that you do daily. But, some of the real doozies, manufacturing, that it has and dealing with different suppliers, it really does have challenges. And one thing is, we have an iconic gown called the Neuralle gown, which is incredible, and it's beautiful on this, really fine tulle, fully embellished. And we did a huge stock order so that because we were selling them quite well, and we thought, we'll get a few backups and make sure that we can actually maybe even, because a lot of girls sometimes want rush dresses as well, and sometimes most of the time we can't accommodate that. So, we really bulked up on this fabric thinking, this is a good thing to do. We're getting prepared. We're getting prepared for a really busy season. We're going to be able to respond to these quick orders and get ahead. And the delivery came, and the tulle that they had used was completely different in colour, in texture, in weight, in drape, in every facet that it could be different. It was different and looked very different to the eye. So there was no way known that we could sell any of that fabric. And also that led us into the issues of we've got to deliver gowns to customers in time for a wedding dress. It's a pretty hard date that that is not negotiable. And saying that we probably have a minimum of 3 months turnaround. On India it's 4. So it's it was a lot, and that you've got to think really quickly and get onto it. And India at the best of times isn't fast. So
what did you do? How did you solve that problem?
We negotiated with the factory. We sourced our own ground fabric and sent it to them and said, you need to resolve this and you need to bead onto this fabric. Yeah. Because we couldn't afford to have another fuck up on their behalf. We didn't have the time. We were already shuffling customer orders and also trying to deliver, seeing how we could move other customer orders so that we could deliver those that were more urgent. And essentially we got there, no one went without wedding gown, but it was one of those times where everyone was almost pacing around the office to some degree, trying to work out how they were going to fix their piece of the puzzle. What's the biggest meltdown you've had? How long is that? Have you had one? I'm a very chilled person. It's one thing, and one person that worked with me once, she said, do you know what, Kyha, sometimes the strangest things set you off and you go wild and it's just not a non-issue, and then the things that are major and actually a really big problem, you're always as cool as a cucumber. I have that too. I actually thrive in stressful, things that are really dire. I don't like being in it anymore. I used to thrive probably a little bit more than I do these days. These days I'm like, I like a little bit more stability. But I do go into that problem solving mode where you just have to take charge and start to come up with different ideas and plans. And I do like that part of it, I must admit. I do thrive in that a little bit. And other people freeze. That's what I've noticed is other people do freeze and don't know what to do. But as long as you've got a solution, it's fine. That is one really, really tough thing about the business that you're in is and I've always known this through my auntie and uncle's business, that in retail, you're putting up this money to manufacture this thing and hoping it turns out right. And if it screws up, it's there's no insurance for it. No, and it's especially those early days where you're taking those big leaps where you don't know, to this day we're still a self-funded business, which I still don't understand how we've got this far. That has caused a lot of issues within itself with the cash flow. But in the past, but it, when you have to get a new space or you're moving out of the second bedroom or you have to, you put new staff on and then you've got to get them computers. Like all of those things like accumulate. And I often, when we've sort of done some of the bigger things like take a new retail space or a new commercial lease, and I'm like, I have no idea how we're going to afford this. It doesn't make sense with the numbers, but if we don't do it, we can't grow. So let's just go for it.
Yeah.
I think having a bit of no fear, calculated fear to some degree has worked.
Yeah, there's some sort of margin there. There's always like a, or particularly with cash flow, it's like, I don't know where this next, like 3 months from now, I'm good for 3 months, but I don't know where.
I don't want to look beyond that. I don't want to look.
Just don't, like, I know, and in your head, but you just keep, and that's what keeps you pushing in a way. It's sort of like that Parkinson's law. It's sort of like, like a forcing function in a way.
Absolutely.
You've
and
got
I
to
also
have it
think
sorted.
When you're the owner of the business or the entrepreneur, you have this, you never ever think it's going to fail. Like that's something I've never ever thought. I've never ever thought that I was going to fail. I was thinking about that on the way here, is that it's never crossed my mind.
No.
It's always going to work out.
Well, that's why you're an entrepreneur, because you have to be optimistic.
Very.
In some way.
Yeah.
At least for your own thing. You've got to be completely and utterly delusional, because if you look at the statistics.
Such a good word.
Like if you look at the statistics, you're just bound to fail. But that is why people go into business, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's good fun sometimes.
The
roller coaster.
It is a roller coaster. The future, I know you're thinking about expanding Chosen internationally. You've gone to the bridal shows and you've seen in New York that really brands like One Day and in Australia that we're sort of at the forefront now. What are you thinking with America? Are you thinking of opening your own store, or are you thinking stocking?
Well, at the moment we stock to 16 places in America.
Okay.
So, and they're doing really well for us. We've got some great stockists. They're incredible and we visit them a lot. I think we will, we are looking to expand our retail footprint both locally and internationally. And it's just about where the data leads us to those locations.
Sydney, LA, right? Sydney or New York?
Look, we've got a fantastic stockist in Sydney as well. So it's, about juggling. Wholesale has been a really good part of our business. And so has online. So we need to make sure that we keep those relationships strong, don't upset anyone. Also make sure that we're making the right decisions for the business and the retail side of the business. But I do think that's the next plan for us, is to expand. We've just rebuilt our website, which launches late December, which is exciting. I hate website rebuilds.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to always do them.
You got to do one every 3 years. They're always out of date.
I feel like I just finish one and then I have to start a new one.
Yeah.
So that launches and it's looking incredible, which I'm really excited about.
That's exciting.
It is exciting, and a few other things in the pipeline that will come out later. Okay,
very exciting. I think, as I said to you off camera, the more you can own in that chain, the better. But, 10 years, I'm excited for when you come back in 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, looking back on things. Have you ever daydreamed or thought of getting your daughter involved one day? Because my dad has always tried to get me involved in his business.
Oh, absolutely. My dad owned his own small business.
Yeah.
So, I've come from that environment of being a family and a product of a small business, and it allows that flexibility. It's extremely stressful. There's long hours, but there is something really special about it. I do bring Willa to work in school holidays, and she sits with the pattern maker Dom and makes Barbie clothes at the desk and doll clothes, and goes and grabs all the fabric scraps, which is really beautiful to watch. Yeah. Whether she goes down that path, I don't know.
She'll look back fondly, I know for sure. She'll always have a thing for fabric.
Yeah, let's hope so. Good fabric at least.
Good fabric, yeah. Like my little weird thing for, paper and ink and all that sort of stuff. It's so dumb, but I just find myself, whenever I see a new book, I go to smell the actual paper.
It smells good though, right?
It smells great. There's nothing like fresh paper. All right, rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah.
What does your morning routine look like?
So I get up quite early, 5 o'clock most mornings.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. We'll scan socials and emails and any other platform that I might have on my phone, and then exercise, and then school.
Okay.
To drop Willa off at school, or sometimes the nanny comes depending on what I've got on that day.
And what do you do for exercise these days? What's your go-to?
Pilates and running.
Pilates, running?
Yeah.
Okay. Evening routine, how do you sort of decompress at night?
I'm pretty easy on the decompress. It's something I've always been really good at. Once I get home from work, I like to come home switched off from work. So as soon as I jump in the car, once I've finished, I'll try and get all my work done at work for the day. And then once I jump in the car, I'll usually listen to a podcast. That's sort of how I get home. I've got a long drive home in traffic. So,
really?
Well, from South Melbourne to Blackrock, peak hour. It's not fun.
No.
So I've usually got a good hour and a bit. And then once I get home, it's, getting Willa to bed. And then I generally won't log back on till the morning. So that's, sometimes you have to, it's just how it is, but especially dealing with it, we work with America a lot and they're often at night, we need to come online for them, but and China also, but I'll try not to touch my phone as much as I can at night or emails.
It's very hard.
It's very, very hard. But I get quite tired by night, I must admit, and I find that my brain is just done.
Yeah, well, if you're waking up at 5, you'd be
5's when I'm on.
Yeah.
Like I'm on at 5.
You'd be out of it by 9 or 10 at night, surely.
And I find I go to work to be there for everyone else.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, more so than myself. So that 5 to 7 is like when
when you get your stuff done.
Yeah, that's go time.
Are you Netflix, YouTube?
Netflix.
Yeah. What have you been watching recently?
I just finished 13 Reasons Why.
Okay.
Yeah. And then last night I watched the Bikram documentary.
Yeah, how was that?
Yeah, a bit creepy because I'd done a lot of Bikram yoga and I didn't know the story behind it. And
Lauren
now
hates Bikram. She's got
so
this.
Does Jack. Jack, I took him once and he turned around to me on the mat when we were laying down and goes, "When the fuck is this over?"
Yeah, she reckons she nearly passed out because the instructors tell you not to drink water during the process. And she's just very... we're both clearly born and bred Victorians, cool climate types. The heat, so for our honeymoon, we're obviously going to go back to Cyprus and we're going to go back and see some of her family in Germany. But we're looking at places like Norway.
Yeah, Bikram wouldn't be for her
Bikram
then.
is not that. And she did it and she's like, I honestly, the lady told me not to drink and I wanted to punch her lights out.
Yeah, that does not, and because it's pretty intense. Even when you've been doing it a long time, it's still intense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I watched that last night. It was interesting.
We watched, we finally finished The Irishman last night. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for that.
No.
It's the new Scorsese film. It's really reminiscent of The Godfather. If you like The Godfather 2, you'll really like this.
I haven't watched that either.
She's never seen it. She's like, yeah, I actually really like the style that he does films. There's no music in it. There's very little music in it.
So it's just a lot of negative space almost?
Yeah. It's really just real life. I just noticed that it was weird. And it goes for it goes for 3.5 hours.
But does it keep you
Yeah, you don't know what's happening ever. You don't know what's happening ever, but it's based on this real guy, Ed Sheeran, this Irish guy. It's super fascinating. But if you like The Godfather, you go watch that. Good
one to add to the list. You're always looking for new ones. And I feel like Netflix is a maze. There's so much stuff that you don't know about that's in there.
Yeah. Do you find that so I thought Netflix, okay, it's good because there's lots of content, but now I find it's good just because there's new stuff coming out because all of a sudden, I'll find something that's been on there for 2 years and I'm like, how the fuck did I not find this earlier? This is really frustrating.
I know, because I feel like there's so much content on there that you just,
Yeah. There's so many series.
I often download it on the planes though.
How do you do that?
On your phone, you can download episodes and then especially flying, because to China, sometimes I fly China Southern and Crazy Rich Asians is about as much as they're offering on there. So once you watch that a few times, you need some new content.
Wow.
And so often, on my phone, I'll watch a lot of series.
Could you do that on the iPad? Lauren's got a spare iPad.
Yeah, probably. I haven't tried on the iPad, only on my phone.
Maybe I should look into that.
It's very good for planes.
All right, last question for you. If you could have a billboard anywhere in Victoria, where would it be, first of all, for placement? Placement's key, I think.
Yeah, placement is key.
And what would you put on it? What would it say?
Interesting. It would definitely be, I don't know what the bridge is called, but as you come from the airport and you're going towards the Balti.
Yep.
Because I feel like that's just, everybody goes past that on the way from the airport into Melbourne.
I know the one you're talking about.
What would it say? God. have no idea, but because we're so image-based, it'd just probably be an image of a gown. That's enough said.
Buy it.
Yeah, just buy. Come in and buy. Get married. Propose.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about like what Billboard ads would look like for one day?
It's interesting. So my dad, his business was signage. And so he used to do all of the Trivision. He used to make all the Trivisions, you know, the old school ones that used to turn. And, you know, then got into digital billboards for the AFL and all of that sort of stuff. So I feel like, yeah, it would definitely work. But I think with Bridal, you'd probably capture more by a short film or
Makes
something.
Makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
I think like that was one thing you did really well. In an interview, you spoke about the fact that you're trying all these different channels like bridal magazines and fairs and stuff like that. And then you realize, well, most of our customers just come from social media, so why bother?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just that classic 80-20 principle. We had that thing recently. I was trying to cold sell for 6 months, and then I went back and I looked at it and like 80% of our people have either listened to the podcast, found us on LinkedIn, or are within our network in some way.
Absolutely.
Why bother?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on TikTok?
TikTok, I would 100% get on, because I think it's the platform that will truly challenge Instagram.
So do I.
I don't think they've found anything that can beat. So the problem with Instagram right now, which I've been studying, so Reddit has like a lot of really good groups in the media space that talk about just things that are happening in media. And so the Instagram Reddit is really good for measuring statistics. One guy who has a channel, it's got about 1 million followers, has gone from, let's say, an average of 1 million views per video to 200,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and he measured it from June to October, and he was trialing out paid at the same time. And it's quite clear that now on Instagram we're getting 5 to 10% of the, because we get clients asking us this all the time. 5
Just
to 10%.
interesting on TikTok, because we've just started looking at it.
We've had videos that have had 50,000 views.
Wow.
I've got 60 followers. The discoverability on TikTok is like no other platform.
Yeah,
you won't get it on YouTube. You won't get it on LinkedIn. You won't get it on Instagram. You definitely won't get it on Facebook. And you sure as shit won't get it on Twitter.
Yeah.
So TikTok...
Does Twitter even exist anymore? Does anybody use it?
I don't know if you've been on it recently, but I find it's just so negative.
It's like Snapchat too. Does anyone use Snapchat
Not
anymore?
really.
No.
I re-downloaded it the other day, and it was actually been so long since I used it. I got like a security notification saying like, "Hey, you've logged into Snapchat on a mobile device we don't recognize." It's like, oh wow, it's been that long. But yeah, I think Instagram is sort of the platform.
Absolutely.
Unless you're something like us, where you know video for YouTube, LinkedIn, because it's a bit more business focused.
Absolutely.
But for you guys, like, I just think there's unlimited real estate on TikTok to have. If you can get brides like in the,
you know, that little one where they like, and they change. How fun would that be?
Stuff like that would be amazing. Like, we made one about the Toto toilets in Japan and how we were playing in the background the song Toto in Africa. That had like 30,000 views.
It's crazy.
You've got to get on it.
Yeah.
We
started, but we're just trying to. It's hard.
Yeah, it's very hard. It requires a lot of creativity, but it's definitely
not as easy as throwing a photo up with a caption. That's
God,
for sure.
no. Well, look, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I've just gone over time. It's 1:35, but thank you. Where can people find you on the interwebs?
They can find us at www.onedaybridal.com.au and on Instagram, which is where most people go to, at One Day Bridal or at Chosen by One Day.
Yeah. Chosen at One Day Bridal is the one that, like, every single time now Lauren logs into. It's like the first thing.
I love that.
Geez, I've been superseded.
That's brilliant.
Good to know. Right. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Ta. Thanks for tuning into the episode, guys. If you like the episode, do leave us a rating on your podcast app. If you want to follow us for regular updates, it's at uncommon_show on Instagram. Search for us on YouTube, Uncommon Show. And don't forget, of course, to subscribe. Until next time, thanks for listening.